county, Dorchester County, on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland. It was all forest and field back then. Now, when I was born, they named me Araminta. But do I look like an Araminta to y'all?
No.
No, right?
No.
I didn't like that name, so they called me Minty, like I was a piece of gum or something. My mother's real name was Harriet Green. So when I was old enough to choose, I changed my name to Harriet after my mother. And I adored my mother, and she had such a hard life with terrible suffering. But she never let that crush her loving spirit. Now my father, Honest Ben Ross, he was a big, strong gentleman, respected by everyone for his honesty. Now they say he was incapable of telling a lie, and it was true. My father was never able to tell a lie, and they had more than a dozen children, but all I ever knew were 4 brothers and 3 sisters. I learned early on not to ask what happened to the others, but what do y'all think happened to them?
They got sold.
Yes, they were taken away and sold, just like that, gone forever. Now, if a person can send another into slavery, it appears to me that he would be bad enough to send them to hell, if he could. Now, as a child, I was always uneasy. Every time I saw a white man, I was afraid of being carried away. Now, the Reverend Dr. Thompson, he was now managing the estate, and he said that he would not sell any of the slaves off the plantation or out of Maryland. And this satisfied most of the slaves, and they were so happy. But I did not trust it, and I was right. You see, the Reverend Dr. Thompson started to settle the outstanding bills of the plantation by selling off slaves. So I persuaded my brothers Ben and Henry, come on baby, I persuaded my brothers Ben and Henry to escape with me, but we had not gone far when, frightened by the danger, he was determined to go back because he was so afraid. And in spite of my protest, he dragged me back with him. And I learned an important lesson from this. One, I would never forget. Freedom is only for those who are bold enough to take it.
All right.
And I would have to go alone. I didn't freedom yet. Freedom is only for those who are bold enough to take it, and I would have to run alone. You see, 2 things I had a right to, liberty or death. And if I could not have one, oh yes, I would have the other. For I had heard my people's groans and sighs, and I had seen their tears, and I would give every drop of blood in my veins to free them. And when the time has come for me to go, the Lord will let them take me. When I was 24 years old, I fell in love with John Tubman. Now, ladies, he was a handsome devil of a man, and he asked me to be his wife. Now, John was a free black. There were many free blacks in the southern states and Maryland at the time. Now, at first, I said no because I was a slave. And if we had children, then they would also be slaves. But John overcame my fears and my concerns with promises to one day set me free somehow. And so we were married by jumping over a broom. You see, there was no legal way for slaves to get married. We weren't allowed in the courthouses, and jumping over a broom was a West African custom and a Shanti tradition, which symbolized going over the threshold and into one's home and starting one's lives together. And for 4 years, we were happy. Well, except for the fact that John never understood what it meant to be a slave. You see, at night when I would close my eyes, I could see the horsemen coming, and I could hear the screams of women and children being taken to a far worse slavery than here. Often I would wake in terror screaming, Then when I was 28, the Reverend Dr. Thompson had ordered me sold and I resolved to leave. I walked away one night alone, and my Quaker friend, the white lady who knew my story, true to her word, she hid me in her attic. And she also told me about other hideaways all heading north. Now there was a song that my father sung for many years, Follow the Drinking Gourd. Have y'all heard of it? Well, my father sang that song, and his father and his father. But it wasn't until now that I finally understood the powerful meaning of those words. So now 2 years after my escape, when I was already bringing slaves to freedom, I had traveled back to Maryland for John because I missed him terribly. And I hoped that he would come and join me in the north. So, I knocked on the door of our cabin. And then, some young woman answers the door. Who are you, I asked. I didn't want to hear it. And then there was John, looking all shamefaced, telling me that she's his new wife, broom and all, y'all. Well, lucky for him, I didn't have my gun on me that visit. But I kept my dignity, well, sort of. But I did not give way to rage or grief, but I collected a party of fugitives, and I brought them safely to Philadelphia. But she was not one of them that I rescued. You may go now. You are dismissed. Now, because of my mission, I met some great men and women. Have y'all heard of Ralph Waldo Emerson?
Yes.
Sojourner Truth?
Yes.
Wendell Phillips?
Yes.
Frederick Douglass?
Yes.
Now, what year did the Civil War break out?
1861.
What year did it end?
1865.
Shortly after, 65, when the Civil War ended, I went up to Auburn, New York, and I negotiated some land with Mr. Seward, New York's Secretary of State at the time, for a little patch of land with the house on it, near his own home in Auburn, New York. And he sold me this house on some wonderful terms. Now, my mother once told me that she ought not to have ever have been a slave. So I paid a lawyer to look up the will of my mother's first master, and there he found the little girl, Rit, my mother, who was given to his granddaughter to look after the little girl until she was of age. But the little girl had died shortly after, and there were no provisions in the will as to what to do with my mother. So this meant that my mother was emancipated, meaning what?
Free.
Yes, how old are you? 9. My mother was also 9 when she was emancipated. My mother was free at 9 years old. But no one informed my mother of this fact. And so my mother lived as a slave in bondage for the next 69 years until she was freed by her very own daughter. And I sometimes think that my greatest achievement ever was rescuing my parents. Yes, yes. You see, my parents were old now, and their life was simple. But praise the Lord, they were free. I could see walking my hands in hand on the other side of Jordan, safe and sound in the promise.
I know that's right.
she great? This was a total surprise, right?
Yes.
Now, when I came in here tonight, they said, well, somebody wants to be on the program. My face got all twisted up. Boy, I'm glad we let her perform.